post-traumatic stress disorder, also known as PTSD. Okay. According to Expedition Balance, on what many veterans already know, and you should, 18 veterans commit suicide every day, 126 a week, and 6,552 every year due to post-traumatic stress disorder. That doesn't mean that they're crazy or anything. It just means that it's really hard for them to cope with traumatic situations, and they don't go out and about to find help for themselves. In 1980, the American Psychiatric Association named it the third edition of Diagnostics and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, because until 1980, it was that PTSD got known as a disorder. Before, they would just think people were crazy. And as of now, every year, 3 million people are diagnosed. Post-traumatic stress disorder is a mental health condition triggered by seeing or experiencing a traumatic event. It is even noted, according to Matthew Freeman in PTSD History and Overview, that Shakespeare and Henry IV demonstrated signs of PTSD once they went back and researched. They figured out that his mood, his situations that he experienced was part of PTSD now that they have discovered it. I will be talking about the history of PTSD. Then I will discuss how the causes and the symptoms, and finally I will identify the treatments for PTSD. Some psychologists are near to prove that it is in our genes. According to the U.S. Department of Veterans and Affairs in 2014, they say that if you find it, since now they have found it that it is possible that it could be in your genes, that it could be possible to prevent it as well by altering something in your genes. But yet it is also proven that a neurological research proves that PTSD associates with neurobiological alterations, meaning that it could last for a long time, even for life, and it cannot be curable. Well, now that I have discussed some of the background, I will discuss the causes of PTSD. And according to Matthew Freeman in PTSD History and Overview in 2014, PTSD was declared as an external problem rather than internal in 1980. And back in 1980s, it was said that the causes were not the Nazi Holocaust, bombings, and war. But as of now, psychologists have researched more, and they figured out that it is any horrifying event or traumatic event that processes such as economic distress, violence, death, and more have become factors of post-traumatic stress disorder. According to Google, there are several different symptoms. There is changes in mood, such as emotional distress, anger, guilt. There is change in behavior. They get irritated really quickly. They isolate themselves. They produce self-harm. And they just go crazy and they scream. There is psychological symptoms such as panic attacks, hallucinations, and flashbacks. They have thoughts of suicide. They black out. They don't know what's going on, where they're at, or what happened. They get nightmares and insomnia. Now that you know the causes and the symptoms, I will show you some of the treatments that there is. According to the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs in 2014, there are several different treatments for PTSD, and since the 80s, those treatments have increased and its effectiveness as well. As of right now, there is counseling therapy, which is a psychological type of therapy. There is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, EMPR. There is prescribed medication that many take, but it says it turns them even crazier. There is group and family therapy, which says that it makes them feel more comfortable. According to the Mental Health Center, the most effective of this is counseling therapy. It is called Cognitive Behavioral Therapy, CBT. This therapy only involves the therapist and yourself. It it helps you not feel so guilty about yourself. You talk to a therapist and they tell you that what happened, the situation that caused this was not your fault. It helps you release your stress and it helps you figure out ways to implement it in your everyday life so you could be less stressful and understand and be able to cope with your feelings. In conclusion, PTSD can occur to anyone, and by now that you know more about it, you will be able to recognize it and possibly help others. First, I identified PTSD and its background, then I mentioned the causes and symptoms, and finally, I identified the treatments for PTSD. These are just some pictures of how people will look and the reasons. But PTSD is not what's wrong with you, it's about what's happened to you.